Hello and welcome back to B-Roll Redux. How you doing, David?
Hey, good morning. How are you? Happy
I
Thanksgiving, the eve of Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, they'll be there. It's Thursday, right? So
Right. First,
tomorrow it'll be
we're
a
having beer can
full
chicken.
Friday. All right, so we got a good mood today, and it's a very interesting one. Do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, we're watching the debut of Rocky, 1975. It was
76, I
Sylvester
think. Yeah.
Stallone. Yeah, Sly Stallone, the Italian Stallion. It's a great movie. I forgot how it was really a good movie. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it again. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of the most inspirational movies, to be made, and one of the most inspirational characters to actually be created. Um, and it wasn't a big studio budget film,
No, no, no.
and today, nowadays, you would classify it as a low budget, almost even down to like a no budget film.
Right, right,
In 1976, it was made for $1 million,
right. That's
1.1 million.
Yeah, we have $1 million.
Yeah. So even with the inflation and then the increase in the dollar, I mean, you're only looking at maybe, $7 to $10 million they made
Right.
this for.
Extremely low budget for
Oh
for the
yeah, and that usually says that the studio is not taking that big of a risk, but it turned out to be the highest grossing film in
it did, yeah.
1976.
Right, right.
Eventually it grossed $117 million.
That's a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of
I mean that you don't get that gross budget percentage nowadays.
no.
It hasn't been since maybe what, the early 2000s, when the Blair Witch Project came out,
Hmm.
where a film is made for like $10,000 and it goes on to make, 90 million or something like that,
Right.
right? Or even the
Exactly.
Twilight series, it was made for such little money, 13, 20 something million, and it's making over 100 something.
Right. And especially this for this category of a sports movie is with relatively unknown characters. Stallone was unknown. Carl Weathers, Burgess Meredith. Uh, yeah, pretty much. And one thing I didn't realize that Talia Shire was Francis Ford Coppola's sister or niece or
I think it was his sister, I believe.
sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't have a clue.
Oh
And it's
yeah,
not
the Coppola family is extensive. Let's put it that
right. They're yeah,
way.
right.
So
So yeah, it was a good
yes,
movie.
Rocky 1976, like you said, it didn't have one of those established stars. When Sylvester Stallone, he was in an audition for another movie, and he didn't get the part, but he told the people that he was also a writer. And on his
Right,
way out the door, the producers asked him, "Hey, what else do you have?" And so he pitched them his movie.
right.
They liked it. They wanted to buy the script from him, but Stallone was insistent that he was going to get the part role. You
Right.
know, so they agreed upon that, and they had some troubles with it. With some studios. Eventually, it ended up at United Artists,
Yeah, United Artists, right,
and even them, they would have offered the producers $2 million budget if they went with establishing star.
right,
And some of the lists is like Robert Redford, Ryan O'Neal, Burt Reynolds, Nick Nolte, James Caan.
right.
Do you see any of those
No,
actors? I mean, they're fine actors,
right, right.
but would it resonate as much as it did?
No, because I mean, this was definitely written from the heart of Stallone. I mean, this is probably the trials and tribulations that he went through because it's his story, his coming out story, so to speak. And his heartbreak and again, but then again, it resonates with other people because it is everyone's a story that again everyone can relate to, and they want to root for the guy, even though they may not be rooting for themselves in these things, but they're rooting for the underdog. And it's it's got some really touching moments. Yeah, but I can't see Burt Reynolds in it because you see Burt Reynolds, you see Nick Nolte, you see these characters with Rocky. It's you see Rocky, see Stallone as Rocky, because it is his story.
Yeah, I mean, with Stallone, you see that vulnerability, you see that everything is on the line. You
Right,
see
because
that he
it
has
probably
nothing.
was. Right, $36 in his pocket and he had to sell his dog. You
Yeah,
know,
he
so,
was trying to sell his dog because he couldn't afford to feed it anymore.
right,
He was in that point of desperation. It wasn't like he hadn't had any roles before,
right,
but this was before Rambo and before he
right.
got big. He was like probably in Steel Magnolias, and you know, was he in that little whorehouse in Texas or something like that? Dolly
Oh, that
Parton.
was Dolly Parton. Yeah, that was after this. Yeah,
That
that
was
was after
after.
this. This was 1975. He was. I didn't look at his IMDb, but I'm sure he's pretty much an unknown at this
Right.
time.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, he was struggling, and you felt that. You felt him in the characters. And we talked about last week, in Galaxy Quest, how the actors made their characters feel so grounded.
right,
While Stallone at this time was grounded.
right,
And when you look at him and you hear him and you judge a book by the cover, you a lot of people would just push him aside.
exactly,
But it
right.
turns out it's like he is really creative.
Right. Well,
And
yeah. I
that
mean, even me. I mean, it's like this guy wrote this script, and he's because I see Stallone as Rocky in real life. Like even now watching him, I still every movie he's done. It's always is that Rocky or is that Stallone?
Yeah, and I think that's what made it so personal for him, and why it actually worked, because he had that connectivity with the character,
Right,
and he was
right,
able to demonstrate it to the audience, very authentically,
right,
because he didn't have to act too hard.
right. It's
It's
like
like,
right,
be yourself, be genuine, be honest.
right. We've all been that
That's
guy
what
or
he
girl
was.
hanging around the store where he likes the girl, but it just just hanging around because I've it again it resonates with then it's always easier to get a girl from a friend that has a girlfriend. Hey, do you have a friend? It is what he did with Polly. His
Yeah, he
sister.
was he was
That was
shy and introverted as well. That's
right,
something
right,
that they shared. And when you have two shy, introverted people, it takes time, right? Things
right,
take develop, and sometimes it doesn't at all.
right, right, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah. I
a
mean,
good
it's a great movie, and what makes it so great is how it came together. Like I said, they had a very low budget,
right,
and as you know, a production never goes smoothly.
right.
There was times where extras weren't there,
Right, well,
and you have to rewrite a scene, right?
right. Well, one of my favorite scenes, and I didn't realize how much I enjoyed the movie until I watched it, then read one of the favorite scenes was the ice skating rink. The people didn't show up, so they had to, make a change. But it was a really sweet scene, and the clock's ticking when the guys, hey, you got 7 minutes. They think, man, I got to close this deal. It was a really a nice moment. Again, they humanize the characters, because
And
we've
like I
always been
said,
through.
that was probably one of the most recognizable scenes from that movie.
Right.
Was the ice breaking scene that there was supposed to be like 300
And
extras there that
right.
day.
Yeah, extras there. Yeah.
That would have been a completely different scene, completely different atmosphere to that
Right.
scene. It wouldn't have been as personal. There would have been
Right.
crowd, there would be noises, there would be people like skating in their way, and probably kids cutting them off.
Right. Things he could have played off, the character could have played off to ease his uneasiness, but it's just raw emotions, and it
Yeah.
worked. It was a nice scene. It
And
was a really nice.
Adrian was shy, so I mean, being around all those people, it didn't look like she was the greatest skater
Right.
but it made everything so personal and so comfortable that that dynamic of that scene with just them
Right.
what was anything superior than what it was before.
Right. And I read in the notes you sent that she had the flu. That's why she wasn't and that it worked. I mean, her being just like under the weather, and it kind of helped her character be who she was.
Yeah, be that shy and kind of shut off, or and kind of keep your
Like, don't touch
distance.
me,
It's
right? I'm
like,
sick, right?
yeah, I mean, it's funny how when things come up like that, you can't help if an actor's sick. You can't push shooting. You have a low budget. You got to shoot it in 28 days. You got the flu. You want that part. You got to do it, but you also don't want to get other people sick.
Right, right, right,
And then having the creativity and that creative mind to actually go, well, I'm going to play this into my character.
right. Exactly. And
And
that's
that just worked so well.
right. And you mentioned the budget. I think having a low budget really helped with the grittiness of it and the feel of the street kind of because it was shot, handheld, for the most part. I mean, a lot of tracking shots, but I think having the low budget really helped the picture in a, as a character, and it helped because it didn't have the big shots and it just add to the streetness of it, and the grittiness of it and the
Yeah, the authenticity, you a lot of the stuff was shot, especially on the streets, um,
yeah, guerrilla style.
guerrilla
It was like
style, which
right,
means you're not going to have lighting, you're not going to have, a bunch of crew. It's usually just the director, the
the camera
camera,
and the actor, right,
guy to drive a car,
right, right, right.
you
And we've
know,
all done
and the
that. We've all
actor.
done that, right? Just go
Yeah,
get the
we've
shot,
all done that at times,
right? Steal the
and
shot. Yeah, we have permission, Larry. We have permission. Let's go get the shot.
let's get it quick and get out of here, right?
Right,
And talking about that, one of the other, most iconic scenes, is him jogging through the marketplace.
right.
And if you look in the background, it's like everybody's
Just like
staring at him
staring, right? Like,
because
what's
they're
this guy
wondering,
doing?
it's like, why is this guy running down the street and someone like, with the
Filming
camera
the van, right?
filming? They had no idea.
Right.
And the person that threw the orange to him had no idea.
No,
He
no,
was
he
so
just thought,
happy. He's like, he probably knew
right,
something was going on. And,
right,
he threw the orange, he caught it, and they kept on going. You don't say cut, you capture it, and you capture gold. You capture
right,
lightning in a bottle. It's like that is something, it's so real because it was absolutely real,
right.
right?
It adds to the grittiness of the film and the desire of everyone to kind of cheer for him, and they didn't. I get that guy that threw the orange probably just made his day when he saw
Oh
he
yeah.
made it.
It's like, oh man, that was crazy. It's like, this is before, social media. Nowadays we're so jaded, everyone's probably like recording with their phone somewhere, right?
Right, right, got a
You
phone,
wouldn't get that nowadays if you had
right.
someone with the phone and a jogger running down there. It's like, oh man, it's some social influencer or something like that,
You just
you know.
bypass it, yeah. Hey, one interesting again in the notes is the Steadicam. How this was like the debut, well, second or third film for the
Yeah, I believe
Steadicam.
it was
Really
like the third
interesting.
film. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Really sold the technology. Be able
Yeah,
to
the
get
guy who
those
actually invented the Steadicam was from Philadelphia.
right from Philadelphia. Right, his sister was involved in. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a great movie. I mean, I kept looking at the time, saying, man, when's the fight going to happen? I mean, it's been years since I watched a movie.
Yeah.
That's like they're going to get down to the wire and really down to the
And that would be like the only kind of flaw I see in the movie. It's like there wasn't enough of the boxing.
right,
It took up like maybe 9 minutes at the end.
right,
And there was a lot of, there was a few instances where, Apollo mentioned, it's like, I'm going to put him down in three,
right,
and
right.
then
I
it's like
remember that. Yeah, the
Creed in
three.
three, Creed in three. There was
Right,
3 or 4 instances where they brought that up. But when they got to the boxing match, they showed, the round one, they showed round two, montage starts. And it's
right,
like they didn't show round three. It's like, well, that's where, even the announcers before game, before the match were saying, Creed in three. He's saying Creed in three. He's going to knock him
right,
down in three. It's like, well, that was a pivotal moment that they actually needed to show because
right,
that is like the first victory that he gets. It's like, oh man, he didn't get knocked down in three. Well, that means he probably threw off everyone's betting already. And
right,
he's already accomplished something that his opponent didn't think he can do. A majority of the people who are betting on him, even the announcers, were saying, in three,
hmm
he's already like proven them wrong. And
right,
it's like they kind of missed that moment,
right,
without even showing, round three at all.
right. And back to the leading up to the fight. One scene I like where there his I guess his one of his group was watching the interview, and he was watching him beat the hell out of the side of beef. And then in the background, you hear him doing all the publicity stuff. Hey, you need to take a look at this guy, and that's where it got him in the ribs. You
Yeah,
just
I
hear
mean, Apollo at that time, his character was more about the business. It
right,
was about the business for him. He was so confident in himself that everything didn't matter but that bank. he needed to make that bank, right? Um, but yeah, I really love that scene. I'll let you know at the end, the news reporter holds up the fists that were
Right.
covered in the cow's blood, and it's
Right.
like
Right.
that imagery is like, okay, Apollo needed to see this because if he would have saw that, he would realize it's like, okay,
Right.
Rocky is a
Take
dangerous man,
take
right?
this guy seriously. Yeah. And that's what he needed to do is get inside. Same thing with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. He never let him get inside. Whether how he didn't. But yeah, it was a nice scene. The foreshadowing. I like that.
Yeah, and the movie itself really shows something that we are missing nowadays, especially since the invention of CGI. We've become more reliant on fixing it in post, doing
Right.
it, doing the problem fixing way after we shot. Back then, in the 70s, in the 80s, you had to literally fix things on set, on site, right?
And they're shooting
You're
on film too.
there,
Don't
you
forget.
don't have the extras. Well,
Right.
nowadays you're probably like, we'll just CGI the extras in there,
Right.
right? Then it's like, no, let's rewrite the scene. Let's creatively think of how we can fix this problem right now
Hmm.
so we can do it in camera.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that is
because they're
something that's lost today.
right, and they're shooting on film again. We talked about. I mean, it makes you more disciplined filmmakers. You only have so many feet of film to get this shot, and it's so expensive back then. But I mean, there was no alternative, so they couldn't even see the. I don't know if the video assist was even available back then, or they had to cut dailies. They probably, I don't think the video assist was even an option back then.
Yeah, I don't think it was either. I mean, literally dailies are coming out and you're just watching what roll comes out, right?
Right, right, right. Yeah, so that and it again, that's having the that's what I like the film part of filmmaking is because it does make you a more disciplined filmmaker. You have to get these shots because you can't go back and do it again. Um, you know, so
Right.
yeah, that
And
answered.
there was probably, I'm pretty sure there was a couple of reshoot shoots, but it wasn't like, nowadays. When
Right,
nowadays movies, when you say we're going to reshoots, sometimes they're reshooting the whole movie.
right. They just ramp up a whole new production. Right.
They
Yeah.
have changed the whole story, in reshoot sometimes, right?
Right.
With test audience and stuff like that.
Right.
And one of the scenes that almost didn't get made, because of that time crunch and because, you only have so much like film reel, right?
Right.
Was, Rocky discussing his fears about the fight to Adrian right before the
Right.
fight. It's like,
Right.
that scene was going to get cut.
Right.
Balboa, or not Balboa, Stallone, he understood that this was an important part of that. It's like he needed to humanize himself to show that it's like, yeah, he is fearful of this. And it's like,
Right. They
but
said they
all
got
he
one.
wanted to do was go the distance. Go
Right.
the distance for him. What was the victory for him,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
And he
they
had
got it in
one
one
take,
take. Yeah, one take. Right. Yeah.
one take to do it, and he did it.
Yeah.
Um, it's just those small little things, those creative ideas, the things that we discuss that make actually good filmmaking and interesting characters. Like, last week when we talked Galaxy Quest and Tony Shalhoub eating from the bag,
Right.
having that character action to make your character more dynamic and interesting when he's on screen. It's the same thing with, Stallone in the racquetball. He's not just walking down the street all the time. He's
Right.
bouncing that ball,
Right. Or
giving him some
McConaughey eating all
action.
the time. Yeah, McConaughey always eating on something. Or
Yeah,
Tom Cruise running.
you got to make the character interesting. You can't just have
Yeah.
him standing there. There was a lot of him just walking,
Right.
solitary on the road. Even when he was on the date with Adrian, he busted that racquetball,
Right.
while he's talking.
Right.
It's something to dynamically keep you interested in what he's doing.
Right. And we mentioned that the scene where he's collecting the money didn't break the guy's thumbs, and he breaks out the inhaler. I mean, that was the guy needed it to live, but they left it in. But again, it humanized that character,
Yeah.
and it makes those things interesting, makes those
Yeah, he was
characters more.
actually having like an asthma attack and he
Right.
needed
Right.
to use
Right.
it. It's
Right.
like
Right.
don't call a cut, especially
Let the
back
camera.
then
Right.
when you're on, film, it probably was more important to like, "Ah, man, let's cut if I'm not going to use that.
Right.
Nowadays, when we're on digital and it's just hard drive space, you should never call cut.
No,
Let
that's
things
good.
play out. As long as
Yeah.
that actor is professional and he keeps going through the scene, it doesn't matter what happens between, because what happens between could be reality.
Right.
Reality affecting your scene that kind of gives you a boost. It
Mhm.
helps that creativity. It helps people actually connect to that scene when something real happens. And
Mhm.
instead of taking you out and you're suspending your disbelief, it's bringing you back in,
Right.
right?
Yeah. 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 It was good. Oh, again, your notes. Thank you for the notes. That it was shot backwards. They put the makeup on, then as they went along, they took off makeup. That was interesting. A way to save money,
Yeah,
because we know it's expensive. For makeup, it's very expensive.
it was actually the sole largest cost of this
Of
film
the production, right?
was the makeup, and the bruises and things like that, that would probably be harder to slowly take off. But
Right.
I'm assuming they're talking about the swollen
Right.
eye,
The prosthetics and stuff. Yeah.
the prosthetics, the breaking of the nose. So they might did a little bit there. That stuff is like, yeah, put that on, do it first, take it off, go on,
Right.
which was stuff you have to do. I mean, that's what made this movie so popular and made it work so well, was because of their creativity that they
Mhm.
had to come up with because of
Under the gun.
restrictions
Right.
and
Right. Being
problems.
under the gun. Right. One funny note when what's the Burgess Meredith's character? What's his name?
Mickey?
Mickey. When he comes over to try to get the job and he leaves and he's walking down the sidewalk. I kind of see a little bit of a penguin walk.
Yeah.
It
Well,
just
you
kind of
got that limp, yeah,
right, right,
and
right,
he's kind of, down, right?
right,
So when you're kind of down in the dumps and you're old, he just walked up those stairs, down
right,
those stairs. He had
right.
problems getting up there. It's like, he's probably like, my hip, it's
Well,
Philadelphia, it's
yeah, because
cold.
when did he play the penguin in Batman? So that was in
And
the
that was
60s.
60 something, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it's just kind of funny for me. So
Kind of
to
stuck
grow
with
up
him
watching the
probably.
penguin, I see him there's a wall done.
And,
But
and
that's a
that
good
was such a
scene.
powerful scene itself. He
Right.
did
Oh yeah, when he
such a
opens the door of the
good
bathroom and he's
job,
still there. Yeah.
showing how, Mickey and Rocky were very similar.
Oh
They
yeah, yeah.
they both had clippings of their old fights. Like, oh, they all have pictures of this is my one fight here. It's like, oh, there's this. It's like
right.
there was this so similarity, but they were both stubborn.
Very
They he didn't ask for help. He didn't offer the help.
right.
And then
Took his locker away.
yeah, took his locker away. It just showed you do feel it was real. Mickey was there because he was trying to take a shot. And that's what everyone is trying to do in this film. And that's kind of like what the main message is. It's like when you have an opportunity, you take it, right? You go for it. Rocky took the opportunity, what he thought was just being a sparring partner to fight him. He turned it
Right.
down eventually, but then the promoter says, this is your opportunity.
Mhm.
You take it. Mickey,
Right.
he knows a guy that's going to be going up against the heavyweight champion, and he knows him. Yeah, he's going to take a shot. You can't fault him for that. You can
Right.
fault him for like not, in 10 years, where was he, right?
Mhm.
Rocky at the time is 30, and in that scene, he unloads, it was such a powerful scene. He's yelling, punching punching the wall, and
Doing the
Mickey
darts.
can hear it all the way
Yeah.
down, and it's affecting him because he kind of is regretting it,
Right.
because he knows that Rocky had talent, but he just never had that, I guess, that initiative or that,
The inciting incident to take it to the next step. Yeah.
right.
And in that where they're in the house where they're arguing and he goes in the bathroom to hide and then he comes out and looks, he's still there. That's a great scene.
Yeah,
Like,
he
okay,
comes
you're
out
still
because he hears the door shut.
right,
Mickey opens the door. Oh, he closes the door because he forgot his hat.
right.
So he grabs his hat and goes to leave again. And he comes out and it's like, yeah, it's like that is something that we
Right.
probably have all have done. You know,
Right.
that is
Oh
something that
yeah.
we've seen before, and we know it's like, okay, if we're hiding, we're going to wait for them to leave. Oh,
Right.
here's
Right.
a leave. Okay, it's safe to
Right.
come out. Oh, he's there?
Yeah. That was
What do you do? Do you try to
right.
play it off,
That
or
was
do you just go
that
ahead?
was a great scene. That was so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
a nice again
it
a
had
human.
humor. It
Right.
had drama. You know, it's one of those that could put you to tears because he lays it all out. You know,
Right.
and then at the
Very
end,
vulnerable.
after all that yelling and after all that, anger, he comes out. You know, very very little sound, right? Just the score going.
Right.
Jogs down, catches up to him, shakes his hand,
Right. Seal the
comes
deal.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It was a good
and
scene.
didn't need
Another
much
funny.
after that. You know.
Right. Another funny moment was he gave Polly the rights to sell it, use his name. And then he puts up the hood of the tank. It's got what
A
the
meat
meat
market,
packing.
yeah.
Yeah. What the hell?
All right, let's take a little break here and we'll come
Okay.
back after we take a break.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we are back and we're talking about 1976 Rocky. I can't express enough how much I appreciate the creativity, that the filmmakers show.
Uh-huh.
Every scene, and you mentioned before we took a break, uh, the hood,
Right.
right?
The hood coming up. Right.
And that was baggy, right?
Mhm.
It didn't
Right.
it did fit them, but what are you gonna do? You're probably shooting way in the morning or a weird hour, or you got to get this filming done today. You
Right.
can't go out and find another robe,
Right.
that fits them. You got
But
you
he
got
made it part of his character. Made it part of his character.
made it part of it, made it not even just part of his character. You made it part of the script and the
Right.
dialogue. And he mentioned, where did you get that? It's like it's baggy.
Right.
It's like you mentioned that. And the same thing about the banner that hangs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The production, they made a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that banner was huge. To reprint it, nowadays CGI, we could fix that color, right?
Right.
In post. But back then you would have to reprint that entire large poster that was probably what 20, 30 feet tall,
Yeah.
if
It was a big
more.
poster. Right.
So it's like, okay, what do you do? Do you try to find new boxers? Even that's going to take time because you're doing that all in one day, probably.
Mhm.
So what you write it into the scene. Hey, it's the wrong color. I wear that. What's the guy's response? It doesn't matter.
Right. They're looking at the other guy. Yeah.
It's not that type of movie. That's
Right.
something like Harrison Ford would say, right? It's like no one's going to be paying attention to that. Well, when you're a filmmaker and you have pride in your filmmaking, when you see the mistake that's going to be that big on
On the big
screen,
screen. Right.
it probably bothered Stallone. So
Right.
what do you do? You think creatively. Let's put it in there. Let's make it part of the story,
Right.
and it fits so well because, like, well, Rocky's such a unknown. He's a local guy, but if it was if they messed up the flag shorts, then it's like, okay, yeah, you probably have a problem then. You can't fit it
Right.
in. It's like here, then that line's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter, man. This is your shot. Who cares about that,
Yeah. Who cares
right?
about that? No one's looking
It's
at
just a
that. Yeah.
detail. What people are going to be caring about is what you do,
Right. Right.
and it just shows. I can't emphasize that much. It's like the creativity, that we just don't see nowadays because we have that crutch of CGI,
Right.
like fix and post. No, let's try thinking a way about fixing it in camera
Right.
in that moment, because
Right.
if you fix it and you make it like that, it's like it adds to the reality.
Right.
Nothing is perfect. Filmmaking is not perfect. You're going to run into problems filmmaking all the time. Just bring those, imperfections and those problems into your story.
Right. Right. You have to. One of the first books I read when I started at HCC was Edit for the Cut, how to edit in and that's what Rick talked about is editing in camera, thinking about what you're shooting while you're shooting it. So it makes it easier to, edit, and just have to, right, you're right, incorporate these things into the process to overcome the challenges later on.
Yeah.
And again, it makes it a more personable in the
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially, even nowadays, we have the opportunity. Like you mentioned dailies. It's like, well, if you watching dailies and you have like this great shot, but something like, something interjected in it, something made it be like a problem. Well, let's roll with that problem. Is there a way, like in the next scene, that we can actually mention that and make that problem work for us?
Right, right.
The best thing you can do for your product is use the best scene that you have. If you have such a great scene, the actors did wonderfully, but you think it's ruined because one hiccup. It's like, man, that is something you just don't want to do. That would be a hindrance to your product,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So all the actors did great. Carl Weathers, he passed away earlier this year, the beginning of
Mhm.
this year. He I loved his audition story, of how he got the
Right.
part where it's like they're sparring, and he thought Stallone was just a stand-in.
Right.
And it's like, oh, it'll be better when we get a real actor in here. The producer had to tell him, it's like, yeah, that's the writer and that's the star. It's like, oh, maybe he'll get better.
Right.
That confidence that he 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 shown was perfect to make him perfect for the part.
Right.
And it's like, what I would always wonder is like, okay, did he do that on purpose, or was that just him? I mean, it was clearly a joke,
Right.
right? He wasn't being disparaging. It was probably
Right.
one of those, just poking fun at you to up your game, right?
Right. Right.
But it could have also literally been, it's like he knew the character. You read the story. This character he's Apollo Creed. He comes out dressed as the father of the nation, George
Right. Yeah. George
Washington.
Washington. Then he transitions to
In a boat. That
right.
boat was moving faster than the car that was taking Jake Paul to Tyson
Right.
fight.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
he, I want you. He knew how to play the crowd. He knew how to publicize himself.
Right.
He wasn't just the world champion. He was kind of like the top of the business. He didn't
Right.
need a Don King, to run
Right.
him
It was just
because he
he
had
had it.
that
Yeah.
confidence in him
Right.
already.
Yeah. He was definitely a showman for and that's one of the, you mentioned that movie. I'm thinking another movie we need to talk about is The Great White Hype. That's, I mean, that's, I mean, it's not a frame by frame, but it's like, it follows the same path,
Right.
and that's a great movie. We need to talk about that one. That was another one of my favorite movies, The Great White Hype.
And like I said before, it wasn't perfect movie,
No,
especially, when you're such low budget film, you're not going to get perfection.
right,
And you just got to hope that the imperfections make it make it better,
right.
make
Well,
it
I mean,
shine better, right?
it's a great story. I mean, no matter, that was one of my things with going from quote unquote a filmmaker to YouTube, like because YouTube, you can put anything up there as long as the story's good. But then as a filmmaker, you want everything to be perfect. And YouTube, it really didn't matter as long as your story was. And that's kind of what Rocky is. It's yeah, it's got some hiccups in it production wise, but the story's good. So that resonates over the fact that they had a low budget, and not great locations, but it worked. It's a great movie,
Yeah, I
and it
mean,
created a franchise. I mean,
and
and
that's something they probably didn't think of at the time.
right,
If you look at the movie and how it ended, it ended encapsulating itself. He
right,
accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. When the 15th round ended and that bell rings and they were hugging it out, Paulo says there ain't gonna be no rematch.
right,
Rocky says, I don't want one.
right, right, right.
It's like he accomplished what he got. He I mean what he Rocky made 100 or 300,000, on that fight,
Right,
right?
yeah, yeah, 350,000.
Just to take that
Yeah,
fight. He's probably set for life.
right, right.
He's been living, on pennies a day, right? Or,
Hmm.
you know, so he wasn't interested in that. He accomplished what he wanted to do. He took his shot. He proved everybody what he needed to prove.
Hmm.
he
Yeah,
wasn't
on
looking
the
there
screen
to
and
be the top guy.
on and off the screen. Right, right. So it's a full circle, right?
Yeah. But the movie was so successful, even though, it wasn't planned for a sequel. Producers are going to want to make a sequel,
Right. They looked at the
right?
numbers and said, we have an audience and let's do another one. When did the next one come out?
That's a good question. It probably what didn't take that long.
Right,
It was a couple of years before this one was 5 years before I was born, at
right.
least. I think the second one was probably
Probably
closer
in
to
the
the
80s.
80s.
Yeah, have to look at that.
Yeah.
We can do a recap. We can do a follow.
And like I said, the first one in the series, I don't think maybe not story wise, but action wise or more entertaining wise, what was the best out of them all?
Hmm.
Two, I think was better. Is it because he won? Maybe. I think it was more because we saw a little bit more involved in the actual fight,
Hmm.
and we saw more of like the training and Apollo's training.
Right,
Everything was in the first one, everything was he wasn't taken serious. The underdog taking his shot, proving himself. Not that he won, it's just he just needed to prove himself that he can do it, right?
right,
In the second one, it was more about the hero story where he's overcoming and he becomes victorious,
right.
right? Third one, third one felt more of a studio film. I mean, you had
Right,
like the cameos,
right.
with
Dolph
Hogan,
Lundgren. Right, right.
and the fourth one was good, but I don't think it surpassed two. The chemistry between Apollo and Rocky, in the ring was probably more connecting, because you didn't really have a villain. It was just two different guys fighting each other,
Hmm.
right? And in the fourth one, you actually had kind of a villain set up,
Right.
right? You
That's
kind
what
of
Dolph Lundgren.
show that it's like, oh, he's just a guy. He's not really a villain at the end. Things
Right,
just happen, but you
right,
kind of play it out as, oh, he's like this Russian bad guy.
right,
Especially in the 80s when that's who were all the
right.
villains
Yep.
in films, or
Right,
either
right, right.
Russians or Eastern Europeans, right?
Right.
And then of course you had the fifth one, which probably the worst. And
Hmm.
then went on for the Rocky Balboa and stuff like that. But over the course of all the things, they showed more and more of the boxing. And I think that's what made it more effective and more entertaining to watch.
Hmm.
Where Rocky in the first one was, I would say it's more of a straight drama than
Hmm.
it is.
The
It's
sports
not an
movie. Right,
action. It's not an action
right.
film. If you're
No,
looking for an action film, Rocky isn't, you know, what you should be watching, be
right.
entertained through action, But if you're wanting to see a good sports, the heart of what is into sports, that, Rudy, if you like the film Rudy, you're going to love
Hmm.
Rocky, because then, it's like the same mentality where it's like no one believes in this person, no one believes in you. But if you take your shot and you work hard,
You can get it. Yeah. Yeah. Again, that goes back to it resonates with everybody. So
right.
it's, yeah, very inspirational.
And I mean, capturing that nowadays is hard, right? Especially with how many products have come before, and we're not really understanding the underdog story anymore. I don't believe. Everyone is probably they see it's like everyone's on equal grounds, right? And like I said, with the iPhones, it's like, well, you can go out with the iPhone and shoot something. If you got a good story, you can do something good with it.
Mhm.
Back then, man, you had to work harder and harder to actually get a script made. And even to do that, it's like, yeah, no one's going to give you money back then. Even if they do, they wanted an establishing star, right? So nowadays, I don't think they can actually capture a story like
Yeah,
Rocky
like
or
yeah,
or
they're
Rudy
definitely lightning in
nowadays.
the bottle, right? They definitely capture lightning in the bottle.
Yeah,
Well,
and we can't really capture the authenticity, and there's also that, like you mentioned, the Steadicam. It's like, well, this is the third movie that actually used the Steadicam. That was new technology back then.
right.
If you were a filmmaker and you knew anything behind the production and you watched the them running up the stairs and you watched the camera do that, you had no idea how they made that.
Mhm.
It's like you think at a time, it's like, okay, what do they have? They have a techno crane. The techno crane, the stairs
Right.
are 100 feet long. It's like the techno crane can't reach that way.
Mhm.
They would have gone up the ramps. Like, well, did they put plyboards and they push the
Right. Push the
push the
dolly
thing
up.
that's got a techno crane on there, no arm on there. It's like it would rack people's mind how they did that,
Mhm.
because of that new technology. And something like that, the only thing that we have close that anything that does that was like the new volume technology.
Mhm.
But even that, it's like that technology right now is becoming a hindrance
Right.
because you're in this circle of LCD screens, and sure, it's giving your scene on your characters kind of like this natural lighting that you're actually in this environment, but you're not in that environment. You're only in a small little area, and now you're restricted, but they're not using that restriction or that imperfection to help their story.
Right. Right. Right.
And it's nothing like seeing, the technology of a Steadicam that gave them the freedom to go anywhere they want,
Right.
move that
Right.
camera anywhere they want,
Mhm.
be on set, be anywhere. Oh, this door frame is only, 2.5 feet. You can't fit a dolly through there.
Right.
Well, you have a Steadicam, you just walk through that, right?
Just
I
get right up
mean,
in there.
the tools that came out back then are superior to what we get now. Like I said, we were relying too much on CGI. We're relying too much on the crutch of we'll fix it in post with CGI
Right.
instead of rolling with those imperfections, rolling with those problems that we get to show that this is real. It makes it feel more real. When there's a problem and there's an imperfection, as long as it's not like a Starbucks cup, in your
Right.
screen,
Right.
if it's something that actually denotes that you captured a real moment, we need to leave that,
Mhm.
embrace it.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Two thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll recommend it to everybody. Like I said, I don't think it's not my favorite. 2 or 4, I would say it was my favorite,
Right.
but the inspiration, that heart of sports is encapsulated in there,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And you don't
Just go there
capture
and get it.
that, too much. Hoosiers, Rudy, Rocky, it's like those inspirational things like that can actually, like we talked about Galaxy Quest, where it's like you go from comedy to drama and then your eyes will tear up. It's like, yeah, they captured that.
Mhm.
The score, the music that was put in there, everything was just done so well to encapsulate that inspirational atmosphere.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It was a good one. Good choice. Good choice.
What are other thoughts you have on the film?
Well, I think Virgin. What's the word? Newcomers to filmmaking should watch it. I think it's a good one to think back.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially
Show
if you're
them.
an independent filmmaker,
Right.
even if you're, in the studios, and well, I guess if you're in the studio product, you're basically in Disney, right?
Right.
Everything. But if you're in independent filmmaking, you need to watch Rocky, and you need
Right.
to, read all the stories and encapsulate of how they took that creativity.
Mhm.
All those scenes that they come in, it's like, you don't have the extras.
Right.
Your props are messed up. Your 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 actors are sick.
Right.
You have to be able to roll with
Roll
all
with
those
it.
problems. And nowadays, we're more likely to like, well, okay, our actress got flu. Okay, we'll shoot around that. So we're gonna add at least 2 days probably to your schedule.
Right.
That's a lot. If you're especially if you're shooting in LA, that's a lot.
Mhm.
But especially when you're time constricted and everything is budgeted down to the T. You know, that they were using their own clothes,
Right.
right? They were, you know, the turtles were owned by
And he still got the
Stallone.
turtles. Yeah.
Buckus, his dog, that was his dog that he was going to sell because he couldn't afford
Right.
to feed him.
Right.
You
Right.
know, it's like everything that they did was to show it's like, hey, we're going to use the money where we need the money from.
Right.
And it's like that is true. It's like, hey, if and that you know what do you have to have? He had to have a leather jacket and he had a cap, you
Right.
know, then a t-shirt, you know, and jeans. It's like, man, yeah, he wasn't a flashy guy. No one was flashy.
Hmm.
You know, if it was they had to go to a ball or something like that and you gotta find a fancy gown, it's like, okay, yeah, you probably or tuxedo. It's like, yeah, you probably would have had to rent one, right? And that costs extra money. Where that $200-300, you know, back then can go to something that you actually see on screen that's
Right.
going to
Right.
actually make an impact.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah.
We highly recommend it.
I highly recommend it. Any last final thoughts on it?
Uh, no, I'm going to read more about the production of it because I'm going to do a deep dive into it. Maybe we can do an update on because I really like. I want to find out more about the production. Uh, it really piqued my interest. You know, to make the production side of it. And
Oh, absolutely. I would love to see their spreadsheets of how they actually budgeted, and like
right.
actually where that million went. It was like 1.1 million, you know,
Mhm.
and the reason why, I mean, that point one actually came from the producers.
Right. They had to mortgage your house. They
Yeah,
had to
they
put a
had to mortgage their house to actually do it because United Artists said that, you know, we're not going to give you a penny over 1 million. If you want Stallone, you know, and you insist on him being the actor, you know, you're not going to get more than 1 million.
right. Right.
And that means they believed in the story. You know, they believed in the story so much that they mortgaged their homes,
Right.
you know, and they got points on the back end. You
Oh
know,
yeah, I think it's a pretty good
Stallone
gamble.
had to take points on the back end, right?
Right.
You know, he sold his script for 350,000. But to be part of, you know, to be the actor in there, he had to remain on set every day as the writer for
Right.
no fee
And work for scale. I think
and
he had to
work for
work for
scale.
scale.
And at that time, like I said, he didn't do nothing. So
Right.
his scale was probably just as much as what a paid extra, you know, nowadays would probably have been per day,
Right.
you know, but he got like a total of, you know, 3% of the gross profit.
Right. Right.
He made
Well, yeah,
117 million.
it's not too
1
bad.
million made. I mean, he made 10, 30 million. I mean, you know, something like that. I don't know. I'm not good at math. You know,
He made
33 million, you know, at
it's
least made on that.
well worth it. Right. Well worth it.
Well worth it. Enough to like move on to the next project, you know, and he became known as a franchise starter. All right, so why don't you tell everyone where you can see us?
Oh, where we can be found? We're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and our YouTube or what's it? Yeah, YouTube Talking Spaces. So yeah, we'll be there by 6 p.m. on Fridays. Get
Yep,
all wrapped up.
right.
I'm David with David.
And then, like you said before, we'll probably come back to Rocky because it is such a huge character, you know, inspirational character. You know, he's in the Boxing Hall of Fame. You
Right,
know, the Boxing Associate Press, Stallone has won an award from that. There's other movies that we need to discuss in the Rocky series. You
right.
know, so we're definitely gonna be recapsulating, you know, some of the Rocky character and the productions of it in later episodes.
Sounds good.
All
So
right,
happy
David. So we
Thanksgiving,
had a
everybody.
great show today.
Yeah,
Everyone, check out Rocky. You know, don't skip on it.
yeah. All right, my friend. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.